Hey, welcome to episode 27 of the Cafe Genius Impresarios audio program. I am your host, Dan Hugo. Solo today. We're going to talk about community versus culture. Today is the 1st of September. It is a Friday. The weather is not wonderful in Greater Vegas. The sun might come out. I think it might be by now, but we'll see what happens. Interesting times for the coming end of the year. Hopefully the end of the summer too. So let's talk about community versus culture. And I'm really focusing, obviously, as I always do, on the entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem. So the culture I'm talking about is the culture of innovation, an entrepreneurial culture. In general, I think the two go together. They together will form a useful culture for any one or both that someone is interested in. So I will treat that as sort of one big cultural feature set, I suppose you could say. So, and then there's community, and there's a lot of building of community, and that's what people talk about, and that's what we'll talk about today. So community building, it's easy to identify some sort of common need. It can be difficult, but it is often easy. If you're in a geographical neighborhood, right, you live near your neighbors, as you often do, there's sort of an inbuilt community of people who, if you keep an eye out for stranger danger, for people who are trying doors, grabbing packages they shouldn't be grabbing, maybe watching young people that they shouldn't be watching, things like this. You kind of look out for each other. There's an inbuilt community of people based on locality and common interests, right? If you're looking out for me and I'm looking out for you, then everybody wins, and it doesn't really cost us anything. You can install Nest cameras and similar, then it does cost you something, but the community exists for mutual benefit. It is by its very nature somewhat insular in that it can keep to itself, and it basically concerns itself with itself. If you look at websites like nextdoor.com, occasionally there will be one neighborhood where, say, package thieves, I'm sorry to shift everything into the negative, but it's low-hanging fruit. Package thieves might be trolling around one neighborhood in a particular type of vehicle with a particular description of the occupants and the people grabbing the packages. So if they share that with another neighborhood, that's useful, but typically discussions are about, what did you see down the street, around the corner, and so on. So community in a geographical sense in the easiest sense, goes that way. If you're in an apartment building or a condominiums, or townhomes, or if you're in a gated community, right? It's right there in the name. You're geographically connected, and the actions of one may affect the life of another. If your neighbor is making a lot of noise past midnight in the community, that neighbor is affecting other members of the community, and so on. So there's an interconnectedness and interrelationship. Could be symbiotic, hopefully not parasitic. So that's community. Can you build a community of people who are not geographically sort of based in a neighborhood? Of course you can. You can build a community of entrepreneurs, like-minded coffee enthusiasts, people who like to go out and find books and read them together. The list goes on and on. So community building is not hard to get started. Now, how do you get people to stick with community once they are a member of one or more? Having a common interest, common need, common motivation, those help. Commune, community. So how do you get people to show up? How do you actually build? Like if you actually view community as something that needs to be built, well, of course you provide free food and snacks and drinks and entertainment and a venue, of course. And occasionally you charge money so that people will value your efforts. Sometimes you do not, and then they may not. The challenge in general is to maintain some sort of continuity so that the people that are early adopters of a community who join in and who see the vision will invite others and will continue to participate into the future so that your community grows with people who have an active interest An active stake, yes, but an active interest, right? They understand the reason, they understand the mission, if there is one, the motivation. What are we trying to do? What's in it for you by joining me when we go to this community gathering? The community could be online. Those are lower friction. You join a Discord server. You post on a subreddit. So it doesn't take quite the effort to go to a place, to put clothes on, things like this. So virtual communities, remote communities are a little bit easier still than assembling and building up a in-person community, but it's the commonalities that drive it, and then often to maintain that continuity or to invite new participants to grow the community, and that's probably more of the building part. There's an expectation that there are those free bonus items, the food and drink and so on. And as well, if you're going to build a community, you must keep in touch with the members of the community. You must, now in the modern day, you must post on social media. You must post photos and videos and so on. Otherwise, you do not exist. It's that simple. You could also have a house in Henderson and invite people to it. And that is the magic of building a community. And then what happens? Who knows? So the challenge that I have seen personally and that I've heard from others, without the free food and drinks and without a substantial amount of effort in general, sometimes actual costs, right? Not everything is sponsored. So sometimes those food and drink come out of your own pocket as a community builder. So hopefully your OKRs are aligned with your participants' KPIs. The select few who do have the motivation and the resources available to build the community are not always appreciated. There will be some applause, some golf clapping, perhaps. Oh, thank you for organizing this, and thank you for keeping it going and all that, because it is a pushing a boulder, sort of Sisyphean task. But unless you have support from sort of the ecosystem itself, local government, local businesses, if you can get a venue or two to jump on and save the space for you all the time and maybe try to reduce costs and so on. So the more enabling is available to you, the slightly easier it is to build that community and keep it going, maintain it and grow it and all that, but not always easy in that regard. So community is easy at first, but it only gets harder. So yeah, I didn't want to make it sound like you snap your fingers and it just happens. That may be the case sometimes, but it is the continuity for the long term. That's where the easy part goes away. And it is often thankless. Not completely thankless, but I think this happens all the time. This is not a Vegas thing. This is human nature. Someone is putting on an event. It happens every month. And I just show up. Well, that's great. Oh, thank you for organizing this. There's really no connection between that thank you and the actual collection of tasks. The pushing of the boulder up the hill, the occasional headaches, the dealing with venue booking and fees and who knows, could be a whole collection of things. But to the casual observer who just shows up and participates, they're a member of the community but not a manager, I suppose you could say. There's no real appreciation for the effort that goes into it, and so the thanks are, while they are surely sincere, they are not always broad enough. How about that? So community building, it's a little bit more complicated than I started off with. That was by design, because certainly you started off saying, oh, it's not that easy, and I'm agreeing with you. Although some people don't know because they've never done it. So how about culture? Why community versus culture? Remember, we're talking about entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem. So a culture of entrepreneurial innovation means that you already have certain sort of habits and expectations and understandings. You don't have to be in any one or multiple communities to be a member of or an enjoyer of a culture where you know that you can go down the street and find an electronic component that you need, where you can probably locate a few people who want to help out on an art project, where you can find And you don't have to be a member of a community necessarily, right? If you go down to the arts factory in the arts district and you say, hey, I'm looking for somebody who'd be interested in helping in a weekend project at a charity event, so on and so on. You might find some people, or you'll find people who know people. And you may find yourself becoming a satellite member of that community of people. That's great. But the culture of innovation, culture of entrepreneurialism, the culture of collaboration that sort of falls out of those, it is a natural sort of innovative entrepreneurial innovators. They tend to see problems as a challenge to be taken on if they have time. Not to say that everybody has time. Sometimes entrepreneurs are busy. Usually they are. But in a culture of entrepreneurial innovation, you can usually find people to join in, tackle a project. You can usually find people who know where the resources are, which place to go to find this particular part, this particular skill. I need a prototype. I need a large format printer. I need a 3D laser cutter. 3D laser cutter? Do they have those? A laser cutter. They should have 3D. So the culture of innovation amounts to people connecting their own interests, their personal skills, with a knowledge, kind of a mental map of what's available, who, what, when, where, why, that can enable what they want to accomplish, and a tendency to lean towards collaboration, sharing information and some of that mental map with others, whether they're in your community or not. You might be a coder and you come across some people working on that charity art project, and they have a question about automating some lighting, and you might say, "Well, I have a Raspberry Pi right here in my pocket," and you might join in. That's a culture of entrepreneurial innovation would make that more likely, rather than I don't know you, and I have better things to do. Right? That's when you're more community focused, and I'm not in your community, you're not in mine, I don't know who you are. I'm not saying that that's automatic and that it's every time going to be divisive. But what I am saying is, in a true culture of innovation, there is just, and this is because I've been in them, there's just a tendency to help out. There's a tendency to collaborate. There's a tendency to contribute to things that you're not directly involved with, just because you know how karma works. You know that a return on investment might come sometime later, not always immediate. You're not always looking for clients. Sometimes you're just looking for a thing to do on the weekend that you can accomplish helping someone else. That's just how it works. So encouraging a culture shift, if that is desirable, I believe, in my opinion, I will happily argue with you if you want, debate. My opinion is, if you encourage a culture shift, if you're looking for a community of innovation or a entrepreneurial community, the tech scene, the startup scene, the arts district kind of has a geographical culture component, but it is also becoming more about people visiting the arts district. I don't know if they're pricing out the actual artists. I've heard such things. But the fact is, if you want to have communities emerge, then having a culture in which they might emerge, or from which they might emerge, in an ecosystem that has the resources to support that culture, that might be something to think about. So if we encourage a culture shift here in the greater Vegas area, if we do indeed want to encourage an entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem, I will say it straight out. You have to start with the kids, start with the young people that are still in school, college, sure, high school, definitely, junior high school, so age 10 to 12, 10 to 13, definitely younger than that, maybe. I have encountered at Coder Dojo in Cork, Ireland, I believe they were like 8 or 9 years old, young, innovative people who were trying their hand at electronics projects and software projects and so on. So there's no lower or upper age limit, but if we're going on the bell curve here, most of the people you want to reach out to encourage a culture shift, they're in high school. They're in high school right now. So they're somewhere between 13 and 18 years old. And they are interested. They're probably bored. They probably look at their cell phone a lot. given a chance, they might actually experience or spring to life and experience something like a hackathon or a challenge or a special project. Some students are involved in the robotics projects, the First Robotics Challenge or VEX, for example. Do they continue to work on those things after the competition seasons are over? Do they work on them outside of the sort of, I will call it a controlled environment that kind of surrounds FRC and VEX? Do they ever go pick up an Arduino board and some sensors and build their own thing that's not a competition robot? Do we encourage that? So if we encourage that culture shift, the community shouldn't matter. That's why it shouldn't matter if they're in high school or junior high school or elementary or college or adults. Your culture of innovation in this case would be enabling people from anywhere and currently anywhere to pursue these interest areas. And you're likely in maker spaces or coffee shops or art studios or something like the Arts Factory or places of commune, not necessarily community, but where people run into each other. They may be from different communities, but there is a sort of a ad hoc community of people in this culture of innovation, or maybe entrepreneurial innovation. Maybe there's people talking about startups, as I do on the first Tuesday of each month. How do I get from point C to point D in my bootstrapped entrepreneurial adventure? So if we have a culture where asking those questions can find answers rather than, I don't know who you are. I don't know. This doesn't serve my interests. Therefore, I'm going to go back to what I was doing, right? So culture of innovation means people do things that are mutually beneficial, that take advantage of the resources they have all around them, and it benefits them to help others. They understand that, and they understand it because the cultural norm is just generally understood. I've not been somewhere where outside of NDAs and corporate competition, but in general, if you are in a place with a culture of innovation, even if you're competing, some people would call it sportsmanship, right? Even if you're competing, if you say, "Hey, can I borrow your soldering iron?" Sure. This is not a cutthroat competition. This is a sports person-like competition. So we help each other, we encourage and enable, and we participate in things, and we help others participate in things. So we are not focused on tech unicorns. There could be a entrepreneurial community that is always gathering to talk about money. Where's my money? It might not be developing the culture around enabling people to reach that point. So if there's a presumption of culture and a building or assembling or maintaining even of a community around that end part focused on the tech unicorns and the capital, access to capital, without the underlying, well, how do I hire people? How do I turn an idea into my future tech unicorn? How do I make sure that the people working on the project are healthy and that our progress is reasonable? Where do you even go to ask those questions? Well, in a culture of entrepreneurial innovation, there are people around who are happy to answer those questions because they're doing it too, because they understand it, because they've been there, they've done that, they've got the t-shirt on, they're easy to spot. So my contention, and if you want to debate this, I will happily do so. My contention is that when you hear people say they're building community, what they may want to think about is encouraging a culture shift, and the community they're trying to quote unquote build might actually emerge more organically, because as the culture shifts and as people are able to accomplish the things that they would like to accomplish, that kind of are a natural fit for the culture. We have a culture of hospitality in Greater Vegas, right? If you want to find bartenders, you will find them, and they will find each other, and they congregate after their shifts, and they talk about their culture, their communities. So these things just happen. They can happen as well with entrepreneurial innovation. So if you want to build that community, consider first encouraging a culture shift. That means encouraging people to be entrepreneurial, to be innovative, to take part in activities that build their own skill sets, to build their own sense of accomplishment, so that they know they're able to do these things, rather than simply coming in at the end, sprinkling money on top and saying, okay, we have a community, let's do this. So that's my contention. That is what I'm presenting today. I will happily debate you and all your friends. It takes an ecosystem. Communities from within a healthy, enabling ecosystem are, I claim, emergent. If the ecosystem is supportive and it has that culture, and the culture can develop a healthy, enabling ecosystem, then symbiotic, not parasitic, then those communities emerge. They sometimes require some seed, such as, hey, we should all get together on Thursdays and build this project, or work on these ideas, or establish a community makerspace, things like this. Those emerge when there's a culture of innovation and entrepreneurialism and entrepreneurial innovation. And cultures and ecosystems are horizontal. That means a culture of innovation might apply to food, might apply to drink, might apply to art, might apply to science. Communities tend to be vertical. They apply to a particular application area or a geographical area or a common interest. A community can function and grow, I would contend, in a more useful and predictable way, and possibly monotonically up, if that's the goal, right? You want to grow larger, not smaller. If the culture and ecosystem are there in place and healthy and are enabling such things, then communities emerge and grow with those resources rather than starting over from scratch every time. I've seen this happen too many times now in the 10 years I've lived here. It's always an uphill battle. And I believe my contention is, I believe that our entrepreneurial innovation culture needs attention. That is where the effort should go. That's where I'm putting my efforts. Come on in and let's debate. Like I said, I'm sure you're disagreeing with me right now if you're listening to this, that certainly building a community is all you need to do. I don't need to worry about the culture. That's for somebody else to deal with. Indeed. That's where I'll leave it today, Friday, September 1st, 2023. Thank you for listening, and share with your friends if you would. That'd be cool. We're going to, hopefully next week, we'll talk about the Muni project and how that's an Innovate for Vegas project, my Muni, and how it will impact our entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem to pursue this form of information sharing at ecosystem scale, you could say. You could say city scale or county scale, but larger than a community, so to speak, right? So not just your neighborhood, not the group of 100 or 1,000 people that all have a common interest, but geographically large areas with many people, with many interests and many notions, how to communicate with them so that they can find information and be aware. And hey, maybe the culture will show up in there somewhere. That would be interesting, wouldn't it? And that is where I will leave it. Thanks for listening. Take care.